Gray is here on the Blaze Radio Network.
Yeah, it's true. I am. And so is Stu. Stu joins us today because everybody's sick. Pretty much the whole crew, except for Corby. Corby, you still haven't gotten COVID-19, right?
Not yet.
Wow. Stu, you had it a year ago or more?
It was September 2020. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while. And I had the old school one.
The Delta variant.
Yeah, the original, you know? Mm-hmm. Like none of this remix stuff they have now. Losers getting that. I had the orig.
Yeah, I don't know which one I had because, I mean, they don't tell you about what variant you have when you test positive.
You had Omicron.
You think so?
I do think so, just because, I mean, we're now at 98% of all cases are Omicron.
Oh, wow. 98%?
Yeah. Omicron is kicking Delta's ass. That is what's happening in this country right now.
I will say this. For a few days, it did not seem mild.
No.
Not at all.
I'm interested to hear your story. I have not heard word one of what happened, where you think you got it, how it all came to you.
I think I got it from my son or Glenn. I'm not sure. But I think I had it before, but I tested negative twice. And so I thought it was okay to come to work because, tested negative twice. But maybe it wasn't so negative as I hoped.
Wait a minute. So this you're talking about this run with COVID.
This run. Mm-hmm.
So
a week and a half
sick.
ago, like 2 weeks ago, I got sick.
Okay.
And so I took the test, and I felt kind of crappy, but I kept coming to work because I took not one but two tests.
So you did the exact opposite of the thing you're supposed to do.
Is it? Yes, I guess so.
I just want to make sure I understand. Your thinking here was to, in the middle of a pandemic, when
come
you
to work,
felt
but I
sick,
didn't feel that great.
Just come in anyway. Okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was a normal because I tested negative, so I figured, all right, I got a flu or a cold.
And that's reasonable, right? I mean,
especially
if you test. I mean, no, wait a minute. I should clarify this. It's not reasonable to come to work when you think you have
sick.
the flu.
But you know me. I do that all the time.
You do
all the time.
And I criticize you for it and have been for many years.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a part of this where you're saying, okay, I tested negative.
Right.
I'm not going to come in here and do any damage.
So I'm not killing anybody.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's some, I could see that logic.
Yeah. Well, then, I mean, it took a turn for the worse. And then, so I, over the weekend, went to the doctor and tested positive. So,
how did that feel? What did that feel like? Were you scared? Were you?
I wasn't really scared. It didn't seem life-threatening.
Right.
It just seemed miserable. I was just miserable for a good solid 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And just kind of sick the rest of the time.
So what are the 3
and
or 4?
the chills were
the chills
miserable.
I hate that.
The fever chills, and then hot flash, and then you're as cold as you've ever been in your life, and then you're out of your mind hot. And then, it was a nightmare. That was not fun. Then there was this thing in my chest that I couldn't really describe, but it was very unpleasant. It wasn't. It's weird because it wasn't exactly pain. It was just kind of misery that was locked in my chest. Really weird. I didn't know how to explain it, really. It's just like it made me really miserable.
Was it a malaise, would you say? A chest malaise?
I think it was a bigger thing than malaise.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It was somewhere between pain and not being able to breathe, but I could breathe. I wasn't really scared of that, but it was a weird sensation. And then, so this day before yesterday, took another test as I started to feel better and tested negative again. So now here I am.
I was surprised. You messaged me yesterday and said, "Hey, every person on my staff is out."
We're out.
Yep. I was happy to be the last choice, and thank you for that. But they had. I didn't even think they were going to be able to put together a staff to make the show go on the air.
No, I know, because everybody here is sick now.
Everybody. I've never experienced anything like this. We went through the original COVID period, and it was like nothing I've ever experienced, largely because everything shut down and society was so weird. But
we didn't have it here that much.
I didn't get it. Not a lot of people around here got it. I mean,
right.
Especially that March, April 2020, that was more of a Cuomo-based disease than anything else.
Yeah.
So everybody up in the Northeast was getting it, and I had friends in the Northeast who did get it. But here, it just felt like almost like an overblown story from the Northeast at times.
Really did.
Yeah. And this one is totally different. I mean, everybody has been wiped out by this thing. Either people who feel pretty much okay, but have tested positive and have to stay home.
Yeah.
Or people who have really, had some level of actual sickness.
It's probably a really good thing that it's the Omicron variant, right? Because it's supposedly so much more mild, and you aren't hearing of people with like hospitalization sickness.
Yeah, it's been weird. It's hard. I think there's so many variables. I was talking to somebody here about this yesterday. Since the beginning of this, I think people have just tried to make broad generalizations based on like a data point. This state is going down and this state is going up, therefore X. And it's like there's just too many variables to make those sorts of declarations.
Yeah.
And like with this, it's like, it seems like it's definitely less virulent than Delta. That seems completely clear to me. It's certainly a lot more contagious than anything we've seen.
For sure. I mean, I've gone 2 years without getting it.
Yeah.
2 years. And now all of a sudden, bam, everybody's laid out. Plus, not only everybody here, everybody in my family was laid out. Oh, really, too? Yeah.
Everybody got it?
Yep. Even my wife, who's been vaccinated.
She got it, too?
But she had it more mild than I did.
Okay.
So
I have a friend up in the Northeast who he's avoided it the whole time. And just yesterday.
Vaccinated?
He is not. Just yesterday, though, his son tested positive.
Oh, geez.
So now it's like with this, if it's in your house,
almost for sure you're going to get it.
Yeah, if it's in your house, you're just screwed. Yeah. I mean, everybody pretty much is going to get nailed by it. And what's interesting here too is there's been so much conversation about the vaccines, but like this has blown through natural immunity too. I think it's helped people who have had it before. I mean, the seat I'm sitting in right now occupies someone who had it pretty badly before.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's doing better today because he's hitting it with the second time.
I think he was pretty miserable too. Keith was, he was down for the count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think it's maybe helped natural immunity a little bit, but it's blown through that too. The idea of getting herd immunity seems like a myth now because I think
it does because it doesn't matter
over and over again. So there is no herd immunity. Yeah. This whole thing we've been talking about for 2 years, screw it.
Yeah.
Not really a thing.
Did you read that apparently in the UK, it's starting to recede?
Yeah, and it is.
So they think that's a pretty good sign.
That's a good sign. The same thing happened in South Africa. And it's starting to happen in some places here. Puerto Rico is seen that already.
Oh, good.
There's some evidence that Texas has actually hit that point.
Really?
I don't know if that's going to hold. Sometimes there's just data quirks and you can't really tell. But I think we're within a week or two almost everywhere of the peak of this thing. So if we're not at the peak, we're starting to come down. There's been a couple of states that were early on that were hit with Omicron that do seem to be on the other side of it.
And while infections are way up, aren't the deaths still down in many places anyway?
So it's the way I like to think about this is there's two parts of this: your individual situation and like a societal situation, right? Mm-hmm. So with an individual situation, your chance of dying from Omicron or going to the hospital for Omicron is much, much lower than something like Delta. There was a study that just came out that said it was 91% lower.
Wow.
91%. On the other hand,
great.
It's so much more contagious and so many people are dealing with it at once that the numbers, when you talk about a societal level and the actual number of people of dying, it still really sucks right now. I mean, and it's coming up. Right now, let me see. I've got the latest here. Give me 1 second here. Of course, obviously, I got logged out of the site that I do use to track the data. Because,
obviously, because
that's a good.
You want to use it right now.
No, right. I mean, what are we at? I'm just going to log in here real quick as we're talking. But if I remember right, it's something like 1,600 to 1,700 deaths a day. Now,
okay, that's
so 1,600. So an average of 1,600 to 1,700 a day. If you extrapolate that over a year, it's basically right around the
where
largest,
it has been,
but the largest cause of death in America. I mean, it's about almost.
But it's been that for a couple of years, right?
It's been up and down. I mean,
really?
we when we had our peak, we hit 3,400, I think, a day, 3,500 a day on average. The lowest was something like, I don't know, 300 when we were in that summer, the previous summer here, where we've had
not this last one, but the one before. 2020 summer.
Yeah, 2020 summer got down there as well. I think I'm going to have to look at this a little bit more to remind myself. There's been so many phases of this freaking thing at this point.
Yeah, I know.
You know, you get to that point where you're like, I can't even look at these charts anymore. The other day I sent a chart to my wife because, you know, that's what you do. He's a romantic guy, you know. You want to. I sent her this chart. I'm like, hey, it looks like Texas. Looks like we're on the other side of this Omicron thing, and she just writes back.
She must have been putty in your hands after that.
She goes, I love how you send me COVID charts. That was her response. Like, no response at all. Hey, that's good news. No, nothing. It was just making fun of me, which I mean, it was hurtful. I was trying to give her good news, and she did not seem to care. Okay, all right, I have this data. So here's our. So we were hit about the original wave. That was only in the Northeast, pretty much. A couple of other places it was hit pretty hard, but that was we hit about 2,300 a day.
Okay.
In that summer, we came down to about 700 a day. Then the winter wave, which would the last wave before vaccines, I guess you'd say, we hit 3,300 a day, fell down to about 300 a day. In this previous summer, so 2021 summer.
Wow.
Came back up to about 2,000 in that last wave, and then the Omicron wave, we are currently up to 1,700. So 1,700 a day, to put that in perspective, is the number of deaths for heart disease or cancer hits usually about 1,700 to 1,800 a day. That's the typical number. So, and those are the number one causes of death in America. The flu, which we can compare the virulence of Omicron to the flu, but the flu, because it doesn't spread as easily, only is killing about 100 people a day. On a normal flu year, is about 100 a day. So we're at 1,700 a day. So while it's not the worst virus in the world for you as an individual, when you spread it over the entire society and everyone gets it on a Tuesday, it can get a little ugly.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see this go up for a little while, but I do think the cases, once that starts turning around, it's going to end fast. That's what happened in South Africa. It seems what's happened in the UK. We're seeing that in a bunch of different places. Puerto Rico seems to be the first one that we're seeing it here, where it's come down considerably from its peak.
It's going to be interesting to see where this ends up. You know, if we just have to live with it forever now. I mean, is it just going to keep cycling over and over and over and over throughout society? Because it kind of looks that way right now.
Yeah.
Because the vaccine doesn't stop it.
Yeah, there's some evidence that it does a little bit to stop transmission, and it does seem to help. So how
effective are they right now? Do you have the stats on that?
It's really hard to tell.
It's nowhere near 95%.
No, nowhere near. I mean, it was below 95 with Delta. It was at in the 80s, like low 80s with Delta.
But now it's got to be in the 50s?
I think it's lower than that, maybe even. The South African study said 33%. Now, that was not
33% effective.
Now, that's just on
wow.
Now, look, 33% as compared to what? To not having it. So it is an improvement, but not very much.
Huge. Not like we were told.
Well, I mean, the thing was designed for 5 variants ago. You know what I mean? It did very, very well against what it was designed for, and held up, I think, really well until Delta. Omicron puts it at a position where it does seem like the booster does advance that the 33% was a just 2-shot situation. So maybe the booster gets you to 50. I don't know. I don't know what it does. We don't know yet. And I don't know that they'll ever know, because this is going to come and go so quickly. I don't know that they're going to know. But again, getting COVID sucks. You don't want to get it. But if you get it and you don't even know you have it, or you get it and you don't go to the hospital, there's levels of this we can deal with as a society.
Right. We're used to getting the flu every year.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what this is like.
And we might get to, I think the upside here, if you want to look at the positive situation, which, of course, is somewhat rare in our society these days. Yeah. If you want to look, the positive way of looking at this is pretty much everyone's going to get this Omicron thing. And it's going to create some level of immunity. It does appear that Omicron gives you pretty good protection against something like Delta.
So if you get Omicron, you do have antibodies to fight off
all the
Delta.
Other stuff. We think.
So
now,
that's pretty good.
I think Omicron's going to wipe Delta pretty much off the map. I mean, it's basically done that so far. So we may never see Delta again. So there's a good chance that everyone now has either vaccine or natural immunity for the most part, and we can go forward.
It's got to be close to 90%.
You'd think. I mean, we're
at least with adults.
Over 80% of adults have the vaccine. So I think you're at 85%, 84 or 85 just on overall adults. So again, I think we are long past the situation where any of these restrictions made sense, and I'm sure you've talked about that quite a bit. I know we have as well. But some of that is just us saying, look, freedom's important, and we prioritize freedom over, everybody being protected. Like sometimes you got to take risk. We're getting to the point now where even if you say, okay, I want to eliminate all risk from society, we get past this bump. You may very well say it even makes sense for a lot of people on the left to make those same calculations. The other side of this, and I thought of this one day, the negative side of it, is this did totally blow through our society with almost no notice. A few weeks notice in South Africa, we're like, hey, I remember around Christmas, they're like, or was it Thanksgiving? It was one of the big holidays, I guess Thanksgiving. Like, hey, just so you guys know, there's a thing in Omicron in South Africa. And then a month later, everyone I know has it.
Right.
And you realize how vulnerable we are. If one of these things comes out that's this contagious but isn't more mild, if that happens,
that's bad.
We are just screwed. And we're not going to have any way to push back against it.
Hard to argue with that. Really hard to argue with that.
We just have to hope God is like, nah, we'll spare you that one.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else we have.
All right, I'll take it now. Take it from the earth. That would be nice if he just removes it. Because I think that's, short of that happening, it just keeps circulating, it seems.
Yeah, and that's not the worst outcome, right? Like, it sucks because the flu sucks. And if it turns into the flu every year and, 30 or 40,000 people die, that's going to suck. That's not good.
Yeah, no.
It's just a much better outcome of what we've had the last couple of years. And it's a way out for everybody.
And it's not like it's smallpox, which has a much higher death rate.
Yeah.
Or, Ebola, one of those things. Now, those are really scary diseases. And this is just kind of scary.
Yeah.
Especially now.
It's not that scary to you as a person, but it is scary to a society because, this is the leading. I mean, again, it's only. We've had about a good chunk of the time since this thing came on our radar that it's been the largest cause of death in the country. Mm-hmm. So it's not nothing. If you have elderly relatives, you know that. I mean, we've had people here that work here whose parents have died from COVID. I have a friend who has a coworker who worked with every day and wasn't in great health. Had some of the similar problems that I have with eating, but wound up dying from it.
Oh,
it's
wow.
I had a distant relative that wound up passing away from it. It's been a tough thing, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I've also seen relatives of mine, not crazy liberals, not people who are basically communists or Chris Cuomo viewers. But people, who are elderly, who are just terrified of it. They don't want to go out of the house. I mean,
they don't,
and they just stay in, and they won't come visit. They won't. They don't want to see anybody because they're just so scared.
Won't see their grandkids, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
it's terrible.
I think that's more common than we think.
Yeah,
especially probably outside of Texas. Texas seems to have handled this a little bit differently than most of the country.
Yeah,
Texas and Florida.
Yep.
So we don't have the full brunt of this virus because we've been, other than a couple of months period, we've been pretty free and we've lived our lives pretty normally.
Yeah,
for there to be a massive pandemic anyway.
It's been a really rough period for a multitude of reasons. However, you're right. I mean, I went out to dinner on May 1st, 2020, indoors. like I said this to a friend
Right.
of mine in New York who was visiting, and she's like, "Wait, what? You did what? May 1st, you went to an indoor dinner?" And I was,
I can't relate to it.
It doesn't seem possible, But Pat and I went to a movie theater in May 2020.
That's right.
Which there was like 4 movie theaters in America that were open, and we were at
we
one
found
of them.
one of them.
We found one of them.
There was you and me and maybe one other person there.
Yeah, there's one. I remember there's one person behind the counter.
Yeah.
And we tried to buy food, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't have any of that food right now." And then there was I think the owner was there.
Okay, right.
And then there was maybe one other
patron.
Yes. And we sat there, and we went to see a terrible Vin Diesel movie that came out in March 2020, and of course had no business because none of the theaters were open to host it.
Right.
And also, wouldn't have had any business if there were theaters open because it was terrible.
Very, very bad.
But so the Texas experience has been a lot different, and we joke about those sorts of moments, but like my kid went back to school on August 13th, 2020, full time, and has not had a closing of their school ever since. Now, what's the difference?
So that's like a year and a half.
Yeah. A year and a half. And they basically, they were on spring break when all the stuff kind of went down, and they extended the spring break, and then they kept extending the spring break. And then all of a sudden it was the end of the year. We're here in Texas. A lot of kids got out of school in like May. So, they ended the school year with the home learning, but then went back to school normal time and have stayed there, both of them, since the beginning, with the only exception being when we actually had COVID and obviously had to stay home. And you think
the kids got it too?
Yeah, everybody in the family got it. So the bottom line there is like, what sort of 2-tiered society have we created over the past 2 years? And think about the difference between kids who have been locked up in their house doing BS virtual learning for 2 years, or at least good chunks of 2 years, who have completely missed out on multiple. I mean, if you are in high school, you've missed half of high school, right?
Jeez.
This is where we are now. Think about that.
Never even thought of that.
It's a lot of time.
It's a ton.
Yeah. So, and on the other hand, you have Texas and Florida, where these kids, obviously, who are very infrequently susceptible to any bad outcomes from COVID, have gone about their lives and been disrupted and missed some things. And there's been some bumps in the road, but have generally speaking had a mildly normal existence.
Read this statistic, so I'm not sure if it's exactly accurate, but before I got sick, there was a stat on 0 to 18-year-olds. And there are, I believe, 73 million 0 to 18-year-olds. And there have been 800 deaths in that age group.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So it's like 0.0001%.
Incredibly small number.
Unbelievably small.
And, it's one of those things where, talk about strange things that have happened in our society. What's the construction of the nuclear family, of society in general? It's that parents, grandparents make sacrifices to keep their kids safe and healthy and happy, right? We've asked our kids to just totally reverse that. Where the kids...
keep us safe.
Yeah, keep us safe with none of the benefit. Right. Miss out on your whole life and take all of that burden on to protect our grandparents. And I know of almost no grandparents who think that that's a good idea. Like, they don't want it. But society has told us we have to basically ruin kids' lives for multiple years so that on the off chance, they have no real problem with it, but on the off chance, hey, maybe you might get someone else sick. And that's a concern. It's something to deal with. I'm not saying you just blow that off. Obviously, you can pass a virus. It happens, as you have recently discovered.
Yes.
But look, you can't eliminate a childhood. Pat, my kids are going to be 9 here in a couple of weeks, 9 and 10. If you look at that, when do you really start remembering life? 5?
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Maybe 5 or 6.
I'd say,
I know you have a weird 2-year-old memory of being locked in your room or something.
Yes,
that's a whole nother story. And mommy wasn't home. There's a very strange story that we can get into maybe
very
later.
Strange.
Do some therapy on. But the most kids, I don't know, 5 or 6. That's I remember some things from that era, bits and pieces. Well, so that leaves my kids with 4 or 5 years of time where they remember. Half of that has been in a pandemic. Half of that has been dealing with COVID-19.
It's unbelievable when you think of it like that.
It's a lot.
Just crazy.
It's a big burden on kids.
Yep.
And to point out, almost no benefit to them. You could say, okay,
Right.
maybe grandparents, maybe us, keeping our distance from our grandparents has saved grandparents' lives. And I'm not saying you don't take some precautions, obviously. But like, you're at this point where these kids don't really remember life without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we've done everything we can.
I mean,
number one, living in Texas, to hopefully disabuse them of that, because I want them to grow up and not really remember the pandemic. That's
for
been
an
my goal.
8-year-old, 2 years is 1/4 of their life.
Yeah, and almost
It's amazing.
a good chunk of it where they remember. I mean, you don't remember when you're 2 unless you're Pat Gregg and you're in your
and
crib.
You've been traumatized.
And you've been
quite
traumatized,
badly.
and you start walking the neighborhood looking for mommy. Do I have this story right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, basically, yes. I woke up from a nap and my mom wasn't there. She just ran to the store real quick. It's
a long time ago.
a long time ago.
You do those things.
Yes. The people did do those things
Yeah,
then. In Helena, Montana, on the mean streets,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't really that concerned about something happening to me. And so today, CPS would show up.
Yeah, it's true.
And I would no longer be part of her household.
CPS shows up when you let your kids play in the park across the street
Yes.
now.
Yeah. It's
They're like
it's
14.
ridiculous. In the Netherlands, in Denmark, I don't know how many names does that stupid country need, but their top newspaper, Bild, just apologized for their fear-driven COVID coverage. This is something that every single outlet in the United States of America should be doing. They've publicly apologized for reporting government narratives surrounding COVID-19 without questioning them.
Wow.
Wow is right. Can you imagine the New York Times or Washington Post or LA Times doing anything like this? There's no way they would ever admit to that.
No. It would go a long way, though, I think.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah,
to restore trust.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things for them to apologize on. I mean, you could go to, for example, the Russia thing and talk about how many mistakes they made. And what they do if they do a mistake that they have to admit, they will bury a correction in an old story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that type of behavior where you're just saying, look, we screwed this up. We want you to know that we are aware we screwed this up. This is what we're going to do to make it better next time. That would go a long way, I think, to restore confidence. I don't think the American people want to hate the media. I don't think they want to see them as the enemy of the people, right?
Right.
But they don't do this often enough. They should.
No, they don't. They actually wrote a headline that said, "We failed." For almost 2 years, we, the press and the population, have been almost hypnotically preoccupied with the authorities' daily coronavirus figures. We have stared at the oscillations of the number pendulum when it came to infected, hospitalized, and died with corona. And we've been given the significance of the pendulum's smallest movements laid out by experts, politicians, and authorities who have constantly warned us about the doormat corona monster under our beds, a monster just waiting for us to fall asleep so it could strike in the gloom and darkness of the night. But they talk about how it has now come out, and not just in Denmark, but here too, that their numbers are inaccurate when it comes to deaths, because a lot of the deaths that they attribute to coronavirus, they died with coronavirus, not from coronavirus. And that's an important distinction. It's like it raised the numbers 27% higher than the actual number should be. It's amazing. An amazing admission from Bild, and one that I'm guessing we're not going to see here in this country. 888-900-3393. More Pat Gray and Stu coming up in just a few minutes. Welcome. Great to have you with us. 888-900-3393. Also, Pat Unleashed on Twitter. Coffee Lover M tweets, Pat and Stu, the party is back in town, boys. Brandon, formerly known as Biden. Good to see our boys coming back from the COVID protocols. At least some of us, yes. And decaffeinated Texan tweets, "It's here forever. We need more therapeutics and less BS. First step, fire Fauci."
Is there a Fauci vaccine? Can you vaccinate yourself against Fauci?
I wish. That would be that vaccine I would take. That's going directly into the arm as soon as it comes out. So you found the chart really of what's going on with, especially in the Northeast. It looks like they might be past the worst of this.
Yeah, here's some states that look like we're have turned the corner. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of cases still. They're still near the peak, but it looks like you have that kind of up ramp and then it comes right down. At least that's what's happened in South Africa and looks like in the UK as well. Rhode Island, which had probably the worst percentage, wise peak of all of these places in the Northeast, looks like it may have finally hit the peak. New York definitely looks like it's past it to me. New Jersey looks like it's past it. Connecticut looks like early indications that it could be past it. I mentioned Puerto Rico before.
What about Florida?
Washington, D.C. looks like it's past it as well. Florida, let me see here. Maybe. It's at or near its peak probably. Texas, I will say as well, looks like it may be past it. Again, that's just the worst of it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean we're not, in for some. I still think the next couple of weeks are going to be really rough for a lot of people. Just from the perspective of it's hard to open businesses right now. It's hard to keep them open.
Yeah.
I mean, they're calling in people here that haven't worked here in a long time that are just like, hey, can you come up and just pick up one show? Just come in and run the camera for one show, please. Because it's so tough to keep people in the building.
Everybody's sick.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And you have outbreaks of the flu at work sometimes, and it wipes a business clean here and there. It happens. People forget that in 2000, I think it was 2009 was H1N1, and there were hundreds of school closings in 2009. Now they weren't whole year school closings. They were a couple of weeks while the thing blows through our area, and they had to close because so many people, so many teachers, so many administrators had the flu, and they just that doesn't mean everyone was going to die. It just, what are you going to do? You don't want to get everybody sick, so you try to take a quick step. We've had those battles before, but everyone's having it at the same time.
Yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned this already, but there's some estimates that virtually everyone in the country will have it by the end of this month. So it's wild. 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks, the remaining people who have never had COVID will get it. It's amazing. That is amazing. Be interesting to see then if that, helps it dissipate, and or do we just keep doing this over and over and over and over again? They're now saying that the masks provided to me, just those little surgical masks, like Corby is sporting this morning.
Well, he's got the N95 on.
Oh, is that the N95?
Oh yeah, he's going full
out. Okay, so it's not
Don't
like
mess
that.
around.
Yeah, nice.
He can't get any virus in there. He also can't get any air. No air comes through. He can't actually breathe. He just has to hold his breath for the whole show.
Honestly, I don't know how people do that for hours and hours on end.
It's tough. Well, it's funny. You go if you ever known any painters. I mean, they're very familiar. That's actually where I got my N95s back in the day when I was at Home Depot.
Yeah,
because they sell them there for people who paint or deal with dust and all these things they don't want to get in their lungs. So the N95 has always worked, unlike these cloth masks, which never seem to do much of anything.
Right.
And they're finally admitting that now. I guess it's now okay to admit that the cloth mask was not a thing.
They're blaming it on Omicron, but it really was the case with Delta, too. It did very little.
Yeah. There's never been any really good studies that have shown a benefit from the cloth masks. I went through all of these at one point on the show, and it was like, all right, there are some studies that, particularly in lab settings, you might see a slight decrease if everyone wears them, right. I mean, there's so many. It's just not reality.
Yeah.
At some point, the law doesn't matter, right? The law does not affect the virus. You can say any law you want. It's about what people do, right? And so there'd be times where they're like, well, we've got a mask mandate. And then you'd walk into a store and no one's wearing a mask. And well, what does this say about your mask mandate? It's not reality. You can say you have a
Right.
mask mandate, but if no one's wearing a mask, it doesn't. You can't even judge the policy. And so we've seen this over and over again. People don't do it. So even if it did work, people weren't doing it, and it doesn't seem to do much of anything. Now, N95 masks, I think, really do something. It's something I've argued for before, that if your focus was not shaming, if your focus was not culture and politics, if your focus was actually stopping the virus, a year and a half ago, you could have said, okay, let's really focus on getting N95 masks to the people who want them. So then, Corby, he wants to wear one. He can protect himself. He doesn't have to worry about us protecting him. He gets to protect himself. And that's America.
Which kind of makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the one of the reasons why none of this stuff works is because we've never had a society where I have to walk into a store and depend on all other people in the store with 100% compliance doing something the right way to protect me. That's an insane construct. If you go, a much more sane construct is, hey, instead of a bunch of people wearing crappy masks that don't do anything, here's a good mask that does do something. And if you happen to be a person who's concerned about this, if it is high on your radar, then you take that step and you protect yourself and you don't inconvenience anyone else.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah. And now,
how about that?
Only now are they starting to say, well, maybe we'll give some N95 masks to people. Now, first of all, it shouldn't be the government's job to give those out. But this should have been a focus of the messaging for at least a year.
Yes.
Protect yourself. If you really want to protect yourself,
if it really is
get
the
one
science that these things really do provide serious protection, then why didn't we have these a long time ago? And why didn't you, if you're going to mandate something, mandate those. Do something that actually works.
And please don't mandate those.
Please.
Pat is not,
right. I'm not advocating for mandating any mask wearing. Interestingly, though, Kamala Harris had this interview, just a cringeworthy interview. And this happened, I don't know, sometime when was it yesterday?
A couple days ago, I think.
It's interesting because she was put on the spot by somebody who I don't think she expected to be put on the spot by.
At what point does the administration say, you know what, this strategy isn't working, we're going to change strategies? 6 former administration officials last week wrote that open letter urging the administration to change course, to change strategy. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
Okay.
Wait. What? It is. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing and then keep doing it or something.
Every single day?
What are you talking about?
Every day it is time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down. And so right now we know we still have a number of people that is in the millions of Americans who have not been vaccinated could be vaccinated, and we are urging them to get vaccinated because it will save their life.
At what point does the administration acknowledge these people aren't going to get the shot?
Thank you.
They're just not going to do it.
I don't believe in giving up on people, Craig. I really don't.
The 500 million tests that have been ordered that are going to be sent to every American, do we know when those are going out?
Shortly, though they're going to go out shortly. They've been ordered. I have to look at the current information. I think it's going to be by next week.
And by the way, it's almost impossible to get one of those right now. Have you tried to get an in-home test?
It's hard.
They're really tough to find.
I ordered some online a while ago, just because we have kids, and they would sometimes have a camp, and the camp would be like, "Hey, we need a negative test," a day before they were going to go to camp. So we had a couple on hand, luckily, but they're not right now. They're almost impossible to get.
Yeah,
which is another complete failure of the Biden administration.
Absolutely.
Now, neither Trump nor Biden did a particularly good job with tests, but Biden has had a long runway here. You go over. I've heard. You listen to people in Europe and even India. They might be like, okay, if you feel any sniffles or whatever, take a test at home. They've got a box of 100 of them at home at all times, And if they feel sniffles at all, they just, they take a test and they say it's positive, they stay home. Here, you can't even get the test.
Right.
But people are getting the test and then 2, 3, 4 days later getting the results.
It's crazy.
It really is insane. And this, can we hit the focus here on the unvaccinated for just a second? Do we have time for it?
Yeah.
Because it's such a dumb focus. We were about 85% of people, adults, that are vaccinated right now at some level. So we talk about the people who are, who will not get the vaccine under any circumstances, and those people exist. It's
and like the interviewer said, I don't know the guy's name, but as he said, there's just people who are not going to get it.
Not going to do it. Novak Djokovic is freaking imprisoned in Australia. He's a millionaire.
Still won't get it.
He still won't get it, and he doesn't want to get it. And you know what? Stop trying to manage his life.
Yeah.
Just deal with making a product that you believe in, and then allow people to get that product. But
and by the way, does he have it? No, he's
he doesn't
tested
have it.
negative multiple times since he's been there.
He just had it in December.
Yeah.
Right? They're beating him up for saying, okay, you just had it in December, and then you went out and took a photo with someone, and they're going after him on that and saying like it was irresponsible. But let's just say, okay, yeah, that doesn't sound like the best idea, I'll admit. However, that also indicates that he had the virus a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Which
means he probably does not have it now. And of course he is testing negative now. But this focus on taking that 85% or 84% and getting it to 100, okay, is all the administration talks about.
Yeah.
And it's like, where did Omicron come from? Omicron was discovered in Botswana. We have no control over the vaccination policies of Botswana. It's not known as the vaccine capital of the world. You'll be shocked to hear.
Botswana?
Yeah, they're at 22%, I think, vaccinated. So all around the world, and I think the poorest countries are under 9% vaccinated total, not under 9%. So there are literally billions of people around the world that can start their own Omicron, even if all the vaccines work perfectly, which of course they don't. But even if they did, there are billions of people around the world where one of these things can start and it can be on your doorstep in a few weeks. So this idea that you're going to focus on the 14% of people who are like, no, I really just don't want to get it for religious reasons, or I just don't believe in it, or I think it's bad, or whatever your reason is just insanity. It's a policy that has no possible benefit for a country. Now, you can argue, hey, Bob, you should get the vaccine, right? Like, you can say that to an individual and say maybe it benefits them. But for a society to focus on this, it has nothing to do with the virus. It has to do with culture. They want to beat up on evil red staters who they can vilify and act as if their efforts to shut down the virus are not their fault, but the fault of Billy Bob over there who won't take the vaccine.
People who formerly support or still support Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's how they break it down.
Yeah, because, and again, we've talked about this 100 times over the years, Pat, but it's like the people who are really anti-vaccine, and that number, the way they define it now, includes me, because I don't believe in mandates. Even though I'm vaccinated, I'm still anti-vaccine. So if you don't believe in mandates, you're anti-vaccine.
And you have a booster, right?
And I have a booster. I'm anti-vaccine to most of left-wing society. But if you think about the people who really are anti-vaccine, who've lived in this movement long before COVID, right? That has always been a nonpartisan movement. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jenny McCarthy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are the faces of it and have been for decades.
Yeah.
They're hardcore left-wing people.
80s and 90s, RFK Jr. was yelling about vaccines, and how they're not safe and shouldn't be taking them.
One of the big top selling books on Amazon right now, and I only know this because I've been looking at Glenn's, who was number one, by the way. But in the top 5 was a book by RFK Jr. called The Real Anthony Fauci. I don't know much about it, but I wouldn't say it's complimentary to Anthony. I would guess
really?
That he's lighting him up. Huh. So they make it seem like it's all Republicans when it's not. And they act like this is the problem, which it's not. It's not the problem. It's not the problem. People make individual choices, and you have to allow for people to make choices, even if you think they're dumb. I mean, think about all the things that we allow people to do. I went to Taco Bell yesterday. They shouldn't be allowing me to do that either. I mean, people drink every single night. Is that healthy? No. People smoke every single day. Is that healthy? No. And people do things. They leave their house when they're sick all the time. Is that a good idea? I would argue I don't think it is a good idea. I think it's something we should not do. But what are we doing here? This is all about them trying to deflect from the catastrophe that has been this presidency. And the idea that just a few months from now, there's going to be an election, and they are going to get absolutely obliterated in that election unless something drastic changes, and they can't even see their path to it.
Yeah.
They don't even know what the path is to get out of it. The wave is coming.
And it's to the point where this administration can't even deny the catastrophe that they've created here. Supposedly they were going to eliminate the virus.
Shut it down?
Shut it down completely within the next, 100 days? He had a 100-day plan to get this thing solved, and I'm pretty sure we're just a bit beyond that now.
Now, are we past Independence Day, though, which was July 2021?
Where we could go have a barbecue with a few friends and family members.
Outdoors in the backyard.
Outdoors in the backyard. Yeah. If you're really good and you're wearing a mask and you've been vaccinated.
That's been one of the things that's been entertaining to watch here is like they keep like the media talks as if New York City is reality, And it's like I went to I took the kids to like a bowling alley / arcade place the other day in the middle of Omicron, right? Like, I mean, everybody I know is like, walk in this place and it is just packed with people, no masks. Like, I mean, and it's like there is a real change in behavior from 2020 to 2021 into 2022, which, of course, probably explains some of the problems, but also, is a positive thing for our country, I think.
Yep. Amazing. Texas. It's just great to live here, isn't it?
It is.
It's just great to live here. 888-900-3393. More coming up.
Pat Gray Unleashed on the Blaze Radio Network.
I'm here. Stu's here. Keith is down for the count, as is Jeffy. As is Rob, our producer.
You had to have a moment where you're like, oh, God, Jeffy caught it. I mean, Jeffy is the king of comorbidities.
Yep.
Anything you can have that would make you vulnerable to COVID, he does.
Yes.
It's funny because I did 6 hours in the tiny studio that we do the radio show on every day with Glenn, with COVID, without knowing it.
Oh.
And I didn't get it.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. Now, Jeffy, I think, walked through a breeze and caught it. But everybody was in, a lot of these rooms aren't that large. And
no.
Everybody's getting it.
And I don't know, are they getting it from something residual left behind? Because it's not supposed to be transmitted from surfaces, right? Isn't that still the case, or is that changed too?
No, I think that's the case. But, again, it seems like everybody gets into a small... there's some, you do a show with someone, it's the worst. Because it's not only normal speaking, right? You're projecting your voice.
Right.
I'm sitting 3 feet away from Glenn for 6 hours with him projecting God only knows how many freaking droplets all over me.
Oh, you're really fortunate.
I will say, if you want a commercial for the booster shot, I don't know. Maybe I just timed it right. Like there's like 2 days it protects you, and I got those 2 days. I don't know what it was. But it was surprising, honestly, that I didn't get it.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Seems like the vaccine did what it was supposed to in your case.
Yeah, and maybe it has some level of protection. I mean, you look at they do the breakdowns of vaccinated and unvaccinated in New York City, which has a lot of these places don't have great data to look at it, but they have it in New York. And even cases is still showing that same familiar pattern with the unvaccinated people having a much higher chance of having it. So, and there's so many variables, it's hard to know what that is. Like, it could be that people who are vaccinated are just like, I'm not going out of the house. I don't know. Maybe they're taking less risks. Maybe, maybe a lot of them are boosted, and that's been the difference. I don't know what it is, but it does seem to be continuing, even though anecdotally it doesn't feel like. I mean, everybody around here is getting it. We have a much higher, probably unvaccinated percentage than the normal population, given that it's a conservative network and a lot of people here are conservatives. But it's been, it's hit people who are vaccinated and people who aren't.
I still think it's kind of strange. It's broken down along those lines, though.
So weird.
Isn't that weird?
So weird.
The conservatives don't want it, and liberals do. It's just
so weird.
And by the way, it was Donald Trump
I know.
who saw that process through to fruition. It's bizarre.
We have been doing this for a long time together, Pat, and we've seen everything, I feel like, in politics.
Yeah.
This is probably the single strangest thing I've ever seen happen.
It is. And Trump is still out there promoting it.
And
he's proud of it.
Yeah.
And people are pissed at him.
Yeah, his base doesn't like it. And, there's an interesting thing that's gone with Donald Trump over the years where the base and him will both change to fit each other. Right, like there have been times where Donald Trump will come out and say something, and his base is like, "Hey, you better not do that," and then he'll all of a sudden say what the base says, and then
he's done that multiple times.
And the opposite is definitely true too.
Yes,
sometimes the base has been saying the same thing for 100 years, and Donald Trump says the opposite, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you know what? We do hate the Iraq War, and we're like, oh, okay, that's the new position, I guess. This is like the thing where they're both in their corners, and they're like, no, the base is like, I don't like the vaccine. He's like, I do. I want Maggie Haberman to like me, and I'm not changing my mind. And he's sticking with it.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because I think beyond the fact that, the vaccine at this point, I've said this to Glenn, it's like, I don't want to talk. Like, what is the point at this point? Everyone's made up their mind. There's no real point in discussing this on a daily basis. At this point, just like we were just talking about, there's, 15% of the population that's just like, I don't want it, and I'm not going to take it. Leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And pretty much everyone else has already had it. So what's the point at this point? But when you look at I'm fascinated by the political fallout of this, and that Donald Trump, it is his nomination. It's his. He can walk into the Republican Party nomination and he's going to win by 50 points, I think, in almost every circumstance. This does open him up, though, to a large portion of the base that is skeptical of the vaccine and does not like that he keeps saying positive things.
Right.
Now, they'll put up with him if he doesn't talk about it. They'll put up, Ron DeSantis is just as pro-vaccine as Donald Trump is. And he said that multiple times, but he doesn't harp on it all the time. He just talks more about the mandates, and I'm against the mandates. Yeah. I think the Republican base will accept a candidate who is pro-vaccine, but
doesn't harp
anti-mandate, and doesn't always focus on the vaccine.
Yeah.
What this does open you up to, I think, is the potential challenger that comes in and is more overtly skeptical. Like, I wouldn't classify Rand Paul as anti-vaccine, and he's been on the show before. He said some people should take it.
I think he's vaccinated, right?
I think he got COVID. I think he's like Glenn, like natural immunity type of person. But he said on the show, look, if you are a vulnerable person, it does seem to lower your chance of bad outcomes, and if you're in one of those categories, like vaccinating might be a very good idea, but we shouldn't be focusing on vaccinating kids, that sort of dynamic. And I think there is an opening for someone who comes in and says, hey, I really don't think this is a good thing. And I don't know that, that's not my position, but I do think there is room in the party right now for that sort of energy. And someone who comes up who's a little bit more overtly skeptical than Trump might at least give him problems. I don't know that anybody can beat him if he decides to run.
I don't think so.
But
you're right.
This is pissing off the base.
Yeah.
Daniel Horowitz, who writes.
They booed him.
Yeah, they booed him
at the O'Reilly event.
Yep. Daniel Horowitz, who writes for The Blaze, very skeptical of the vaccines, and he writes a lot about it. And came out with a piece the other day, basically saying who needs Biden if you have Trump? To go after these red state governors who aren't boosted, because he made comments to that effect recently. You see this from a lot of people. He had an interview with Candace Owens, who's I don't know if you'd call her anti-vax. I don't know her. I'm not familiar enough with her specific position, but someone who's certainly very skeptical of the vaccine. And, she basically afterwards was saying, well, he's really old and he doesn't look up the research. It's like, well, how do you elect the guy then? Right? How is he your candidate if you think he's really old and just won't look up research? So I don't know. There's an interesting dynamic going into 2024 here.
For sure. Yeah, no question. 888-933-93. Also at Pat Unleashed on Twitter. So we got that to discuss. Also, things are heating up a little bit again on the January 6th front, where... of course, it was the day that democracy almost died.
I did a show with Jeffy the other day when everyone else was out with COVID. And every time I said January 6th, he'd interrupt and say, the day democracy almost died.
It's kind of become a thing.
It rang through my head the entire day.
So they have Stuart Rhodes, who's the leader and founder of Oath Keepers, the far-right Oath Keepers militia. Do you describe Oath Keepers as, I'm not sure I know that much about it.
Yeah.
But is it a militia? But anyway, he was arrested, charged with 10 others with seditious conspiracy. So this seems to be probably the most serious charge leveled at anybody so far.
Yeah, for sure.
For allegedly organizing a wide-ranging plot to storm the Capitol. Now, supposedly, they continued to plan the overthrow of the country after January 6th. And I'm just hard-pressed to understand how what they were doing could have ever wound up in anything other than where it did. Because
right.
You're not going to overturn a republic, by the way. It's a republic. And you're not going to overturn it just because you storm into the Capitol building.
No, it's not as much about residents of buildings as you might imagine.
No, if it was, we'd be pretty fragile.
Like if we had a finders keepers clause, and we found we're the ones inside, we get to keep it.
But
that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
No.
So the case against him and the others is the first time prosecutors have filed charges of sedition against any of the more than 700 people accused so far of taking part in the assault. And again, I don't know what it is that they were planning to.
They supposedly had gathered. I mean, the charges are that they gathered weapons to try to do something with them. They had they're like, he has personally spent $15,000. It's like, to someone who doesn't know anything about guns, that sounds incredible, but $15,000,
what, 10 people got a gun?
Right? Yeah. I mean, an AR-15 is several $1,000s, right? I mean, so again, that I think with someone like this, they probably have. It seems like they have text messages. I've heard some of them read messages and in Telegram groups and everything, where it's stuff that doesn't seem good. And this guy, by the way, is a Yale Law School graduate. This guy's not just some rando.
Wow. The head of Oath Keepers?
The head of Oath Keepers, yeah. He has a military background, a Yale Law School graduate, and is seemingly a pretty smart guy, but also a guy who, I don't know, would probably not agree with us. It's interesting, too. A lot of the stuff around this has been, why aren't they making these big charges? They're putting they're putting grandma on probation for running into the Capitol for 5 minutes, and they're not doing anything big. I thought this was a big thing. You keep saying it was the worst day since the Civil War. Where are these big charges? I mean, sedition's a pretty big charge, right?
Yeah, it is.
So this one does seem like they're trying to expand that, and I think part of the weirdness around this is that they've been waiting for these moments. I do feel like we're going to have a few of these where they go after people that they think did more than that. And again, it's nonsensical. This is the fever dream. This is a fantasy league, right? It's a fantasy league sort of insurrection. There are some people who seem to be playing fantasy league insurrection that day, where with absolutely no chance of success, with no plan to make this work, we're trying to convince people to run into the Capitol and overthrow it or whatever. But they make it seem like it's Valkyrie.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. And even if it were, you're still not overthrowing the government.
Yeah, Valkyrie didn't work. I don't know if anyone knows that.
Right.
I hate to spoiler alert on your Tom Cruise viewing for the weekend. Valkyrie doesn't work. They lose. But I mean, the idea that now maybe I guess they're to try to give the best case possible. They might say, if you got people in there, you took over the building, and then the president acted and tried to commandeer the military to crack down and hold these buildings. I mean, I don't know what it would be, but I can tell you this: Donald Trump would have to be actively advising the military to help these people.
And the military would have to be compliant.
Agree.
They'd have to agree to do that.
None of these things happened. None of this happened. It was a bunch of, right. It was a bunch of crazy people, some of them with horns on their head, who went weird. In. And as far as I know, the horn head guy is not the Speaker of the House at the moment. This delayed the certification of the election a few hours. And I'm not, people are like, don't downplay January 6th. I'm not. I'm telling you what it was.
You never have.
No. I think it was really bad. I mean, I've watched the footage.
I think you give it even more credence than I do. And
probably. And I don't mean it in not from an insurrection standpoint, but the fact that and I know you'd be with me on this. It's completely unacceptable to bash a police officer over the head.
Absolutely.
To attack a police officer, to drag him down the stairs. Those people who committed violent acts against police officers, screw you. You know, people who
you're not patriots.
People who broke windows and especially the people. I mean, there may be trespassing cases, for some people who just walked in, but I mean, the people who actually did damage inside the building.
There were parading charges.
Yeah,
they paraded,
right? But it's nothing, basically, right? Like parading charge,
Yes. We show it all the time. I don't know if we have the manpower to do it today, but we show hundreds of people coming in and out of the doors.
Yeah.
The Capitol building, just peacefully walking in and out.
Yeah.
Back and forth, in and out, back and forth.
Yeah.
There was an element there that they weren't doing anything really wrong.
No. I mean, they probably shouldn't have been in there.
No, they shouldn't have been in the building.
Most of them knew they shouldn't be in there. There was a guy who there's only been 3 FBI interviews, I think, that have been released, the text of them. Mm-hmm. And one of them, I went through the whole thing. And the guy was a lifelong Democrat. This is what he told the FBI. Lifelong Democrat, who was registered as a Democrat, he wound up being kind of a Trump guy towards the end and was concerned about the election being stolen, believed that, it probably was stolen, wasn't planning on going to the event at all. Took a train down to the event morning of, because he lived, within train distance and went to D.C. often, just kind of check it out. And he's like, I just kind of got caught up in the moment. People were rushing in.
I think a lot of people had that happen.
I just did it. And I went in and I feel like an idiot for doing it. Later on, they found out that there was an altercation, because they found video of an altercation with him and an officer in which he got kind of in a fight with an officer. And he wound up getting 3 months in jail. That's kind of probably what you get if you have a bar fight, right? If you have a bar fight and you wind up hitting an officer, you probably get about 3 months in jail. I don't know. I've never had a bar fight with an officer. I know you get a lot of them, Pat. I mean,
all the time.
All the time. I don't know if they...
3 times last week alone.
How many months did you get in prison? Was it about 3?
Yeah, it was about 3 per charge.
3 per charge.
So 9 months, yeah.
Delayed, so Pat will be here for a little while. But, the point is that, that seems... Look, it seems relatively rational to me. If you went inside the Capitol, you hit a police officer, you have probably a short prison or jail sentence.
Yeah.
If you go in there, you didn't do anything, maybe you have probation, maybe you have a small fine. That seems rational to me. A riot is bad. We criticized it all throughout 2020. Riots are bad.
Yeah, then you can't turn around and say it was okay at the Capitol building.
Exactly.
You can't.
So I don't have no problem with minor charges on some people who did things that were across the line. On the other hand, if this was actually the Civil War, if this was actually, some real attempt, if this was Valkyrie Part 2, there would be much more here. And even with these charges yesterday, I don't know that you saw anything. And remember, the guy from the Oath Keepers didn't even go in the building. Now, I mean, if he's leading a seditious conspiracy, it's going to be difficult to prove that, I think, when he was one of the few people who were like, nah, I'm not going in. So we'll see. I think they probably will convict a lot of these guys because they're going to find text messages. All these guys talk big,
And they at least should get their day in court.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
A long time ago, actually. But it's been over a year. 888-900-3393. People make a big deal out of New Year's resolutions, but here's one that you should make and keep right now. Resolve to do something that will help get this country back on track, like supporting causes and companies that share our values and love this country. That's why we're proud to partner with Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative cell phone provider. And you should be doing this too. They offer broad nationwide coverage. They use, of course, the same cell towers because everybody does. There's only a limited number, and so you're going to get the same great coverage, but Patriot Mobile has plans to fit any budget. They've got a 100% U.S.-based customer support team, and so they offer exceptional customer support. Plus, They share your values, and they support organizations fighting for religious freedom, constitutional rights, sanctity of life, and our veteran and first responder heroes. So go to patriotmobile.com/Pat or call 972-PATRIOT. You'll get free activation when you use the offer code PAT. And veterans and first responders save even more, so make the switch today. Support a company that loves America and shares your values. It's patriotmobile.com/Pat or 972-PATRIOT.
Pat Gray on the Blaze Radio Network.
Good morning, Americans. It's Friday.
I forgot both top hours. COVID memory, I guess.
Do you have the brain fog?
Yeah, COVID brain fog.
Did you have that at all?
I don't think so. No.
I did have a couple of friends who got COVID recently and said that was a real thing. Like just
really?
Yeah, they were just like their brain just felt like it was cloudy. You know, you couldn't like access the information that they wanted to, and they just felt.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you have a day where like you didn't get any sleep, you know, and you're really tired, and you're just like, oh, I can't.
That's every day.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, I realized that as I was driving in at 5, whatever it was this morning. This sucks. Why do you do this?
What? It's a good question.
Why do you show up
No
here
one
every
knows.
day?
No one knows. 888-900-3393. Let's go to Dana in Virginia. Hey, Dana, you're on the Blaze.
Hey, Pat. How are you?
Good. Good. Thank you. You?
We well, we are a household of 3 recovering from Omicron.
Oh boy.
After we got our power back on in Central Virginia last week, we had maybe one day reprieve, and then we were taken down. Our 7-year-old recovered pretty quickly, but you were just talking about brain fog. My husband and I. It's pretty bad, and we were vaccinated, and I've called in before. I had, as you said, girly issues with the Johnson & Johnson.
Oh, the vaccine? Yeah.
And I was actually scheduled for a hysterectomy on this past Wednesday, but of course that got canceled because of COVID.
Yeah.
But, so my husband works for the local school system, and we were just waiting on this communication from them about changing their definition of fully vaccinated, which they're testing the waters out. They say you've got to get boosted.
Yep.
But we were very encouraged by Steve Dace the other day, and we kind of have the mindset of let's find out.
Let's find out what? What are we going to find out?
We're going to find out what they do when we say, hey, we got natural immunity now.
Yeah. Well, you got the vaccine though too, right?
Yeah.
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 So,
they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't.
All right. Appreciate it, Dana. Hopefully you guys recover quickly, because it can be unpleasant. That's for sure. Even the Omicron thing, when it's supposed to be so mild, is still kind of miserable.
And the brain fog thing does seem to be real. What happens if Jeffy gets brain fog? Will he become smart? Well, it's possible. Like he comes in, he's just doing like physics.
Right.
We're like, wait.
That would
so
be.
So if we put the 18-minute together along with the 7-minute together, you got 22 minutes. You sell it with 8 minutes of ads, you got 30 minutes.
30 minute.
It's just that easy.
This is that easy. Like, what if he comes back and can do that math now? What if he can add 2 numbers together after COVID?
It would be the best thing that ever happened to him, obviously.
He would be dangerous. I mean, if Jeffy could do basic math, like that is something that society is not ready. Screw Omicron. They are not ready for that.
No. I think the Earth might stop spinning on its axis if that were to happen.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
It's scary to think of. 888-900-3393. Also, Pat Unleashed on Twitter. More coming up. Obviously shorthanded today, which is why there's no more on trivia.
Oh.
It's everybody has been taken down for the count. Really, almost everybody on the team, producers, sidekicks, everybody. But Stu was nice enough to jump in here.
Yeah, this has been fun,
and it has. It has.
I love coming in here to do this. Not when Jeffy's here.
Well, of course not.
With
Who
him
would
not
like
being
that?
here,
Right.
this is great.
Right.
This is great. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to do it.
Now you've been vaccinated and boosted. For how long have you had the booster shot?
I got it in like mid-December. When the Omicron thing started popping up and I started seeing the data on it, I was like, I don't know that it's going to stop it. I would not be surprised if tomorrow I had COVID, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know that it's going to stop it, but I just was like, well, I'd like to not get it if I could. And
yeah,
the calculus is a little different for me than I think many in the audience in that I don't see much of a downside to getting the vaccine. I don't get it because Anthony Fauci told me to get it. I get it because I look at the data and I think it supports it. If you don't, then don't get it. I'm not your doctor. I'm not your dad. Neither is Anthony Fauci, right? Like that's my attitude on it. If you think it helps, go for it. Now, look, I did get through 6 hours of Glenn's spittle when he had COVID and somehow survived it. And Jeffy, I was around him a little bit too.
Right.
Now, I think I did a show with him, but I think it was before he had it. But anyway, everybody around here has it. And so far I've been lucky enough to get through it. Is that the booster? Is that pure luck? Who knows? I don't know. You got to make your own decisions. I just think that, I'm going for the whole set at this point. I've got natural immunity. I got Johnson & Johnson. I got Pfizer. I want to get the Russian vaccine and the Chinese vaccines and then a little Moderna.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Just get everything mixed up in there.
Yeah. I want them all. I'm just going for the set. I'm like a baseball card collector.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, look, I think people should be able to make up their own minds. Certainly none of this stuff should be mandated. But, look, if you want to get it, get it. We know. I say this all the time, but it's like, Fox News does a lot of vaccine sort of skepticism. Which, I think it's important to cover both sides of it and make sure that, get everybody on and get all the opinions you can get. I'd rather have more information than less. But every member of their audience is vaccinated. Now, you might say, I'm not a member of their audience and I'm not. You're very rare then. And their audience, we know their ages. And their ages, almost everybody who watches Fox News, percentage-wise, is 65 plus. And almost everyone who's 65 plus has been vaccinated.
Isn't it in the 90s for that age group? I can't. Seems like it's way up there.
For vaccinations?
Yeah,
and 95 plus. I mean, they get to a certain point.
Wow.
They don't know.
Really something.
It gets to a point where you get to like 99.9 and then 100 and then 101%. And the reason why that happens is because there are record-keeping issues. Before the boosters were approved, though, there's a decent amount of evidence that a bunch of people that were elderly went in and just said they had never been vaccinated. So they showed up in the records as a second person, when in reality they were just getting their booster before it was approved. So, I think actually the numbers show it's over 100%. They just know it's north of 95. So they can't really break it out because people basically just came in and lied. Whatever. They shouldn't have to lie to get. No. I think they should be able to make their own choice. But we know a lot of people listen to conservative media and never hear word one that these vaccines have done some good. And, Trump has said that and not always been received well. But we have to remember, too, there are differences between activists and, people who are just Trump supporters, right? A lot of people who are really against the vaccines are really passionate about it. People who just got a shot at the local pharmacy and then went on with their lives are not very passionate about that moment. It's not very significant.
Right.
Honestly, it was not very significant to me. I went and got it because I thought it might help, but I didn't know.
There are people who exhibit cult-like behavior with the vaccine.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They're fine people, Pat, on both sides. Okay?
Okay.
That's how this works. They're fine people on both sides.
Sure, we'll go with that.
That phrasing I found always works out well. When you just say there are fine people on both sides. No one ever lies about you when you say that.
Right.
No one ever says that you're saying white supremacists are wonderful when you just specifically said the opposite.
888-900-3393. Also at Pat Unleashed on Twitter. Hey, this weekend, the Bills-Patriots game the big playoff game, wild card weekend, is supposed to be one of the coldest weather games of all time.
Yeah.
I think 6 below zero. Is that what they're expecting?
I think that's the feels like.
Yeah. Okay. Feels like 6 below.
6 below zero.
Okay, that's chilly.
One way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's chilly. But Buffalo, New York gets that way.
Does it now?
You know what I was surprised by was that your Eagles actually made the playoffs, and they are playing
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Now this is all gravy for me. I will admit. As you may have watched in the NFL preview show we did at the beginning of the year, predicted the Eagles to win less than 7 games. I think. I thought they were going to win like 4. So the fact that they're in the playoffs,
it's pretty good. That's all gravy.
Now they have not beaten a playoff team all year.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yes, they have beaten a bunch of really bad teams.
What's their record then?
They finished 9-8.
Okay.
First year of the 17-game season, but they were 0-6 against playoff teams. So they're not. Look, they're probably, if they're not the worst team in the playoffs, they're one of them. However, just the fact that you get an extra week out of the football season is fantastic for me. I did not think this was going to happen with them this year, so I'm excited about it. And you mentioned the weather. The one thing about that Buffalo game, it's going to be really cold, but no wind. Like they're expecting no wind, no precipitation.
Okay.
So yeah, cold, but maybe still playable. The Tampa game, on the other hand, we may be seeing rain and 25 to 35 mile an hour gusts.
Oh wow!
So if there's
any
chance the Eagles for them to win this game, it's there's a hurricane. That's their chance. They need to have a Category 5 hurricane roll through in the middle of the game. If that occurs, they run the ball a lot. Maybe they can somehow sneak this one out. I'm not optimistic at all about winning, but I am just like, I'm in happy-go-lucky mood that the game's occurring. Like,
yeah, you're already playing with house money.
Yes, that's what it feels like this year.
Wouldn't it be something if Tom Brady wins yet another stinking Super Bowl?
That would be something.
Something
I don't want to see.
No, I'm kind of tired of it. You got 7, all right, and then I think do you have 5 other also rans? Has he been in there 12 times? How many times has this guy been in the Super Bowl?
He's only lost 3, right?
Is it 3?
He lost twice to the Giants and once to the Eagles.
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once to the Eagles. That was Super Bowl 52, the greatest football game ever played. Super Bowl 52. But yeah, I think he's 7-3.
Yeah.
Look, the only thing worse than Tom Brady winning another Super Bowl would, of course, be Dallas winning it, which would be the worst thing that's ever occurred in
human history.
Human history. I mean, go back, look at it. You're not going to find something worse than Dallas winning a Super Bowl.
Really?
Yeah, no. You're never going to find something worse. But let me ask you this hypothetical here for football talk, Pat.
All right.
There was always this debate. Is it Tom Brady? Is it Bill Belichick? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it? And it went back and forth, and people had all their opinions. And then Tom Brady leaves, and he wins a Super Bowl in his first year.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone says, okay.
It's obviously Tom Brady.
I mean, look, Belichick's still a great coach, but Brady's something special. What if somehow the Patriots win the Super Bowl this year?
Oh, then you're back to...
Then you kind of back to Belichick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Brady stepped into a team that was built to win and just had a problem at quarterback, but had great receivers, had a great defense. I mean, that was a good team he stepped into. I mean, the Patriots were trashed just last year.
Yeah.
If
Belichick, he turned it around already.
Now, I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl, but if they somehow pulled that thing off...
It'd be something.
That would be incredible.
With a rookie quarterback, that would be amazing.
I mean, they played really well this year, made the playoffs. I mean, I don't think there was a lot of people expecting that. There's something to be said there. And he wants it. After everyone last year was like, oh, yeah, see,
obviously,
he won without Belichick in his first year.
Yeah.
If he comes back and wins with Mac Jones, a rookie quarterback,
be impressive.
He's going to have a good argument. I'll say that. What do you think about Green Bay? Are you excited?
I am. Yeah, it's what were they 13-4 on the year?
They seem pretty much like the real deal here.
Yeah. I mean, they've won a lot of close games. But they've beaten really good teams and Rodgers is having another great year. I think time's running out though. It's got to be now or never.
Yeah, this is a big year.
Yeah,
and I
it's
think
huge.
they've underachieved with him overall as a franchise. I mean, they won one Super Bowl.
Right.
You got this all-time great.
Same with Favre.
Yeah.
Who got one.
Let me ask you this. MVP of the league. Everyone says it's obviously Aaron Rodgers. He's probably, I mean, who would be next? Tom Brady, Cooper Kupp, maybe Jonathan Taylor of the Colts. But like, it's not one of those years where it's like a seemingly real tight contest. However, there are 50 voters. One of them's Peter King, who's incredibly liberal. Another guy has come out and said he won't vote for Rodgers because was unvaccinated.
He's not vaccinated.
He's unvaccinated. He let his team down.
Asinine.
You're telling me that there's not 5 more, 10 more? How many voters, just because he's unvaccinated, will not vote for Aaron Rodgers?
I think there's probably quite a few.
Quite a few. Enough for him to lose it? I don't know. But it's going to be. I think it's going to be closer than people realize.
Yeah, it might. I mean, that guy was pretty outspoken. He apologized for it because he got caught.
Yeah, only because
he got hand caught in the cookie jar. But
there's no way Peter King is voting for Aaron Rodgers for MVP.
No.
Is there?
No.
The guy is. Read his columns.
And it's got nothing to do with vaccination status. Either you're the most valuable player or you're not.
I mean, their case is, well, he didn't get vaccinated. He didn't take the shot for the team. And so he wound up missing an important game or whatever that they lost. I mean, they looked terrible without him. Which is, to me, an argument for him to win the MVP because you watched him play with Jordan Love. It didn't look so pretty.
Right.
But I think there's enough. I mean, there are liberals in there that are voters, and they're going to see that as a real problem. That he kind of in a cute way tried to get away from admitting that he was unvaccinated.
Yeah, what was it? Did he say inoculated?
Is that immunized, I believe he said. Immunized, which is true. Well, yeah. I don't know if it was actually true with him. I think he had some alternative treatment that he was considering himself immunized, which I think if you had natural immunity, though, I mean, I think immunized is a totally fair way of describing it.
But again, when did people have to disclose their medical information like that?
Yeah. The only reason
it's a brand new thing, and he shouldn't have to do it.
The only reason it's mildly important in the NFL is because the rules are different for vaccinated and unvaccinated players. So knowing, if you have an unvaccinated player that might miss 2 games because of an improperly timed COVID test, and that could be a problem. Unlike the Philadelphia Eagles, who had a plethora of very well-timed positive COVID tests, incredibly well-timed. The rumor is that they got into this Week 18 situation. We're playing the Dallas Cowboys in a completely meaningless game. They couldn't really move around much. They were going to be 6 or 7, playing a road wild card game anyway. So they highly recommended to their players they all got tested. They didn't need to get tested because most of them were vaccinated anyway. They don't, only if they get symptoms do they have to get tested, or if they had a close contact. They didn't, but they were like, you know what? You guys should come on in. Let's get a test gone. It's going to be a good week for it. So they came in. They all got tested, and like 15 of them were positive.
Wow.
And so all of them went on COVID leave, and now none of them can be put back on COVID leave during the playoffs. So tons of their guys.
That's pretty smart.
It's pretty smart. Now, part of me thinks, did they all just get in a room and cough on each other? And I don't think that happened, but I wouldn't be stunned to hear it.
Who knows what goes on with these NFL teams?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did get into a room and cough on each other. All right, 888-900-3393. Let me tell you about real estate agents I trust. When you're buying or selling or doing both with your home because you're relocating, you need an agent who's going to get you through the process. And it's a complicated one. It's a difficult one. It's a really stressful time trying to sell your home. And so you need the advice of a realtor who knows what they're doing, who can lead you down the right decision path. Like if you're going to remodel your kitchen, will you get your money out of that? Or your bathroom, just replace some tile or the cabinets, whatever the case may be. These are the agents that Glenn's team has worked really carefully with, because this is his company, and they've fully vetted all of these agents to make sure that they're the best in each and every one of these markets.
And Glenn knows, because he always had disasters with real estate agents.
Yeah, we know that he sold his home in Connecticut for $39.95.
Right.
$39.95.
That's a nice house.
Yeah, it was a very nice house.
That was underpriced, Pat.
A little bit.
A little
Some
bit.
would say over $100 underpriced.
But that was not.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's a little excessive. Yeah. By the way, Pat. Speaking of Glenn, I need to go get set up for radio.
Hang out with him.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you.
And I
Thanks
appreciate
for coming.
it. And
it's been fun.
Yeah, for sure. Are you coming in for radio at all? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I don't know that anyone even knew you were back until like last night. So
yeah.
So we may see you on radio, but if not, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks. All right. So Real Estate Agents I Trust. The name really says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com.
You're listening to Pat Gray Unleashed.
Great to have you with us. 888-900-3393. Let's go to Darren in Kansas. Hey, Darren, you're on the Blaze.
How's it going, Pat? I'm glad that you're back. I've missed you.
Thank you. Missed you.
Hey, I just had a quick comment I was going to make because my sister and I were talking last night. Her husband got the COVID way early on and had all of the symptoms. Now, he never went and got tested because testing wasn't quite as, available to everybody at the time.
Yeah.
But, loss of taste and smell, chills, body aches, high fever for a long time. And what was funny was, she didn't quarantine from him. At the time, it really wasn't a quarantine issue because, again, it was at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. She just assumed she was asymptomatic. So, and she works for the government, so she was around people also that had COVID, never has got COVID, and again, just assumed that she was asymptomatic. Well, she got the shot, and I guess in Texas, she lives in Houston, and I guess in Texas they're doing I guess they're checking your antibodies, and it's a free service that you can do, and she actually got picked to do this. Somebody from work had told her, hey, if you want to check and see your antibody levels, sign up for this deal. And I don't know exactly what it is, but she got her test back and has no natural immunity to COVID. But she has never got the disease. And the funny part was I was the same way. My daughter got COVID. And again, I'm not going to quarantine my daughter,
Yeah.
So, I mean, we just did whatever. But again, my daughter had a fever for 5 days straight, lost taste and smell, body aches, all that kind of stuff. And due to actually volleyball in school, we never got her tested as well, but we just assumed that that's what she had. And again, I never came down with anything, and I haven't had the antibody test, but I'd be interested to know now whether I have natural immunity.
Yeah.
Or I just didn't catch the disease. And I'm wondering if that is part of a deal. I mean, is there something in our bodies that makes us not catch the disease?
It's a good question, and I've wondered the same thing because for 2 years I, had been exposed to COVID multiple times, over and over and over again, and never got it until the last week and a half or 2 weeks. So I don't know. Sometimes it seems like there's something in your body that's fighting it off, and then something happens, and all of a sudden you have it. So I don't know if you're in the clear or not.
Well, and that was the other thing. Both of us have got a vaccination. I got the J&J, and she got one of the other two. And when we got the shot, neither one of us had any symptoms either. I mean, afterwards, neither one of us felt like we even got, anything.
So have you had boosters too, or just?
No, I have not had any boosters. I don't think my sister has had boosters either.
And you're not planning to, or are you planning to get the booster?
Again, it's one of those, I'm not sure whether I want to or not.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about the shot now? Or do you feel like you're going to get one, or do you feel like you have natural immunity?
No, now I definitely feel like I have natural immunity.
I'm sure. And maybe that was part of it. Maybe part of it was the Omicron variant that just makes it more contagious that we could get it. And maybe I'll get it. I have no idea, but I just found it weird because I was 100% sure that we were going to come up with natural antibodies because, but I just don't understand how neither one of us got it. And like I said, I really like to go I wish I lived in Texas because I would go do the study to see if I had the antibodies, but I might spend the money to go check because I'd love to know.
When I got the antibody test, maybe 6 months or a year ago. It was only, I think it was $37 at CVS. So it's not a really expensive test.
No, but the one, I think the one that tells you the levels of antibodies that you have, that's a little bit more expensive.
That's
I think
possible,
my other sister got that, and they spent about $100. But no, I might do. Like I said, I just talked to her last night, and we were talking about it, and she said, "You know what's really weird is I don't have natural immunity," and and I was like, "Wow, that is weird." But no, I might do the CBC one, or we've got a Dillon's here, and I think they're $20 to go do it. I might actually go do it just to see.
Yeah, it'd be worth it. Appreciate it.
I think so.
Thanks, Darren. Good luck. I will say that I thought I was in the clear, and then all of a sudden, not so much. But they say, again, I think we mentioned this earlier, they say by the end of the month, this Omicron thing is so contagious that virtually everybody in the country is going to have COVID-19 by the end of the month. So that's good news for you, Corby. You got that going for you.
Yay.
But because you have not had it at all, right? The whole time.
I managed to skirt without having it.
Yeah, nice. That's really nice. 888-900-3393. Also at Pat Unleashed on Twitter. By the way, President Biden has all but conceded defeat on that voting rights legislation where he's trying to federalize elections. He spoke at the Capitol after a key fellow Democrat, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, dramatically announced her refusal to go along with changing Senate rules to try to get this passed without a Republican filibuster. So Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin have stuck to their guns and so far have helped fight off this unbelievably unconstitutional law. Biden had come to the Capitol to prod Democrat senators in a closed-door meeting, but he was not optimistic when he emerged. He vowed to keep fighting for the sweeping legislation that advocates say is vital to protecting elections. He said, the honest-to-God answer is, I don't know whether we can get this done, which is great news because any right-thinking American would not want this to get done. He said, as long as I'm in the White House, as long as I'm engaged at all, I'm going to be fighting. He also had this to say.
If you haven't gotten vaccinated, do it. Personal choice impacts us all, our hospitals, our countries.
Right.
I make a special appeal to social media companies and media outlets. Please deal with the misinformation and disinformation that's on your shows.
On your shows.
It has to stop.
It has to stop. Okay. So he wants social media companies to remove all information that he disagrees with. Just so incredibly dangerous, these people. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay healthy. See you Monday.
Pat Gray, only on the Blaze Radio Network.